They did not know her name when they took her. They only knew she was Apache, that she walked alone at dusk with a calm that unsettled men who had lived too long on stolen land, and that she did not beg when the rifles rose or cry when the rope bit her wrists. The men who stole her believed silence meant weakness. They laughed as they dragged her toward the wagons, joked about ransoms and rumors, never noticing how the desert itself seemed to draw closer, how the wind died, how the crows on the fence posts stopped calling. The woman's face remained still, dark eyes reflecting firelight without fear. Because fear was a luxury she had buried long ago. She was called Nalinai, born of the Mescalero bloodline, raised on stories that were not bedtime comforts but survival maps. She had been taught when to run, when to wait, and most important, when to let enemies believe they had already won. As the wagon jolted forward and the men celebrated, she tilted her head slightly toward the eastern horizon, where night thinned into promise. Somewhere beyond the black ridges, a man who did not sleep lightly would already feel it, like a hand closing around his spine. By sunrise, he would be at their fence, and by then it would be too late. The outpost they brought her to was a forgotten cattle station rotting at the edge of the territory, ringed by a warped fence and a confidence built on distance. Men like these trusted Miles more than morals. They locked her in a shed that smelled of rust and old blood, certain that chains and walls were enough. They did not see how she memorized footsteps, counted breaths, traced the weak places in their routine with her ears. Nalinai had learned patience from winters that starved, villages and summers that burned them. She had learned endurance from women who gave birth, while the world fell apart and still stood upright. When one of the men came close enough to taunt her, she met his eyes. Not with anger, but with something worse, recognition. He flinched, though he would never admit it. Outside, the moon climbed and the land listened. Miles away, in a cabin built of timber and regret, a man known by many names and claimed by none rose from his chair, as if called by a bell only he could hear. They called him Elias Crow, though he had been born with another name and buried it with the dead. His hands were steady as he checked his revolver, the old one with the worn grip that fit him like bone. He did not ask questions. He never did. He had learned that answers wasted time, and time was the only thing evil truly needed. Elias had once been law, then outlaw, then legend, then ghost. He had loved once, and the price of that love had carved a canyon through his life. When word reached him, no, not word, a whisper carried by a rider who did not know why he rode so hard, that an Apache woman had been taken near the dry wash. Elias saddled his horse before the whisper finished breathing. He did not ride for money. He rode because
some lines once crossed demanded an ending. At the outpost, the men drank and argued about what to do with their prize, unaware that confidence makes noise while danger moves quietly. Nalinai listened as they debated ransoms and threats, and she smiled for the first time that night. A small inward smile meant for ancestors who had survived worse. She shifted her wrists just enough to test the knot. It held for now. She did not rush. Rushing was how people died. Instead, she sang under her breath, a song older than the fence, older than the guns, a song that carried names across distance. The desert answered with silence, which was its way of saying it had heard. Elias rode through the night without stopping, his horse breathing hard, stars wheeling overhead like witnesses. He remembered another fence, another sunrise, another moment when he had arrived too late. That would not happen again. The closer he drew, the clearer the trail became, not tracks alone, but the stink of fear masked by arrogance. He saw the fence just before dawn, crooked against the pale light, and reined in. He did not charge. He dismounted, rested his hand on the post, and waited. Legends were not built on haste. They were built on inevitability. Inside the shed, Nalinai felt the air change. She straightened, heart steady, senses sharpened. Outside, boots scuffed. A man cursed. Then silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. She closed her eyes and breathed once. Somewhere a gate creaked. Somewhere a voice tried to sound brave and failed. The first shot cracked the morning open like thunder on bone. Men shouted. Another shot answered, closer, cleaner. The shed door rattled as someone slammed into it and fell away. Nalinai twisted her wrists, felt the knot loosen a fraction more, and waited. Elias moved through the outpost as if he had drawn it in his mind long before arriving. He did not waste bullets. He did not speak. Men ran, and running only shortened their lives. When one reached the fence, Elias was already there. the sunrise behind him turning his outline into something unreal. "You should have left her where she was," Elias said softly. And the man dropped his gun, because sometimes the body understands what the mind refuses to accept. When Elias reached the shed, he did not kick the door. He knocked once, a strange courtesy in a place that deserved none. "It's over," he said. Nalinai stood as the door opened, rope falling from her wrists like shed skin. They looked at each other without surprise. Recognition passed between them, not of faces but of scars. He handed her water. She drank, nodded once. No thanks were spoken. None were needed. The sun rose fully then, spilling light across the broken fence, revealing what arrogance had built and what justice had undone. Nalinai stepped outside, lifted her face to the warmth, and the land seemed to exhale. Elias watched her, then turned away, already thinking of the road ahead. This was not
an ending. It was a beginning that demanded a reckoning, because the men who ordered this would come asking questions, and questions always bled into violence. As they rode away together, the desert behind them whispered a warning to anyone foolish enough to listen too late. They had stolen the wrong Apache woman, and by sunrise the legend had already arrived.